find your own life. Like I am Trevor. I like East Village. I like Soho.
My name is Dan Allen. We have one of the winners here, one of the $200 Amazon winners, Jenny Baird from Cur- ba- Baby Name BabyNameWizard.com. It's very exciting. By far, like the three, you definitely raised to the top, and I heard you were very excited because that's your biggest expense.
My biggest expense is Amazon Web Services, but I'd also like to say that about 2 months ago or 3 months ago, we moved our hosting to Amazon Web Services, and it's increased our traffic, our speed so much that our traffic has gone up about 20-25% during that time.
Well, that's awesome. And I also was overhearing that you started coming to Ultralights a long time ago. Like, how long ago was that?
My first ultralight startups, I think, was this month, January, 2 years ago, 2009. So shortly, it may have been December 2008, but shortly after ultralight startups started.
And what is there a particular event or a particular topic that really pushed you to the next level?
Well, a couple of things I'll say about my experience here. I was telling somebody that the first time I came to ultralight startups, there was a Business Week reporter here, watching the pitches, and she was pregnant. And she said, she tweeted the next day or that night, "Oh, I love Baby Name Wizard pitch at ultralight startups." So I twittered back to her and said, "I'd love to tell you more about my business." And we set up a time. I went into her office at Business Week. She was writing an article about ultralight startups. And she wrote like one line about me, Jenny Baird from Baby Name Wizard. And like a month later, I got a call from a big media company who wanted to acquire my company. And I said, "How did you even hear about me?" And they said, "Oh, we saw the article in Business Week." So, I mean, from sitting here pitching at ultralight startups the first time to having an acquisition offer for my business was very, very powerful thing. And we wound up not closing on that deal, but it definitely gave us a lot of motivation in year one to keep going and to build from zero to what we have today, 650,000 monthly users.
That's incredible. And how many users did you start with?
When we launched the first month, we probably had 25,000.
How did you start with like a strong base?
Started, my business partner had a blog that she had and a little tool that had been up online previously to us launching the site.
And I know you're a ultralight fanatic. Was there a particular reason why you came tonight?
I came tonight because 2 years after my first pitch at ultralight startups, I've been bootstrapping for 2.5 years. I've worked other jobs to be able to keep going with this company. Everything we've earned up till now has been reinvested back in the company, and this month I'm taking my first salary, and I'm very grateful to Ultralight for providing the community and support that's gotten me through these 2.5 years.
That's amazing. So is your spouse, partner, family really happy right now?
Yeah, my husband, I actually have a new husband who I married a year ago, and he's actually been incredibly supportive of my business. So I'm very, very lucky. And I think he's given me a lot of courage to keep going on too.
Well, I'm excited to go onto the site. I haven't made a baby yet, but when I make a baby, I'm going to go to your site and I want to make a name using your site. But just congratulations to Jenny Baird.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Oh yeah, let's bring on Mr. Bruni. How you doing? Very excited. This is James Bruni, and he has a very infamous blog. Is that correct?
Yes, James Bruni, blogspot.com.
So I've scoured the internet, the interwebs, and I've done some detective work on you. Make sure that I'm correct. MIT
That's right, MIT grad school.
and political science. Were you teased at all by MIT students for being political science?
Well, at that time, that was back before there was a media lab at MIT, and most of the internet and new media studies were actually housed in the political science department. We used to have a telecom policy program and a number of other internet kind of related programs that predated the famous MIT Media Lab. But back in those days, yeah, it was considered liberal arts.
Interesting. And now, did it hurt your parents when you got a summa cum laude instead of a magna cum laude?
My parents are Italian. They speak Latin. Fortunately, they were able to understand the difference.
Excellent. And I also saw that obviously you started this. Went to BU in journalism, and later on you went to Atlantic City.
Yeah, I worked as a reporter. My first job coming out of MIT grad school was I wanted to see what it would be like to work as a news gatherer, as a journalist, before entering PR and the other fields that I entered. So I worked for 2 years as a newspaper reporter in Atlantic City for their main daily called the Press of Atlantic City. So I covered the birth of the casino industry, the Pinelands Commission, which was a huge, environmental thing down there. I covered a nuke plant in Oyster Creek and a lot of other cool things that I did as a reporter. And that better prepared me to be a good PR person who could really pitch reporters. So I understand what it's like to be on the other end of the phone and be on the receiving end of a pitch.
Did you ever get into situations that you felt endangered your life or put you in jeopardy, or was it?
My press card saved me once in a mafia-run discotheque in Atlantic City. But no, I mean, your press card is something that you keep for your life. I mean, I still have mine. My office. Yeah, it's important. It's a great credential to have. I think for any PR person, even today, you ought to think about being a reporter for a couple of years before you go out and get into a PR agency or working for a startup.
So right now, primarily, who are your clients?
I'm working with a number of New York-based startups, including Outbrain, Fast Society, Vizu, and a number of other leading startups that are here in the city. Some of my previous clients include Livestream, StreetEasy.com, eShare, and IO360 Digital Design. I've been working in the Silicon Alley community for the last 17 years and worked for a slew of startups over those years.
The one that really reached out to me was your latest client, Outbrain. Can you describe anything about that?
Yes, Outbrain is what's called a content discovery platform. When you look at, go to online news sites, you'll now see their platform where you see, like at the end of an article, there'll be article recommendations, other content that, much like Amazon or Netflix has algorithms that suggest what people like you might like, other kinds of products or films. Outbrain has developed a similar technology that enables newspapers and online sites to offer readers content, other suggested content that they might like that matches their profile. They have about 20 plus algorithms that they've worked on. And what's exciting about them is they're now doing what they call sponsored recommendations, like the New York Times and many other leading dailies will recommend content to you that's essentially earned media. If Ford has a new car coming out, a hybrid, and they have a favorable article about it, they will use that and insert it basically into some of the search results. It's an exciting way for companies to find a new advertising medium. And it's also a great way for newspapers and publishers to monetize their sites and get more traffic and more advertising. So,
Well, fantastic. Well, you can go on Mr. Bruni's blog. Can you say the blog name one more time?
it's James Bruni at blogspot.com.
And you can check out all his clients. They're giving me the sign.
Facebook page, facebook.com/BruniPR.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to get back in action, but thank you very much and have a wonderful one. All right, thanks.
Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh wait, we should get you guys microphones, huh? I don't know how to use one. I don't want you. Okay. There you go. Launch just about. Actually, I'm just going to turn this off for a second because we're going to have a keynote for like 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then the switches are on the bottom of the side. Yeah, turn it off for a second. You can be back in the Okay, go ahead, just pull it out. You can copy and file it. No, I didn't copy. go. All right, so I guess you'll use this mic, or, I mean, because there's all this, well, actually, you know what, you can use one of these. All right, so we'll get started. PR for startups. Thank you so much for hanging in there. So we have even more added to our agenda today than the additions that you've already seen with the Boston pitching and the Twitter-based pitch contest. So in addition to our standard panel, try and mute this or turn this off. We have a keynote. So we're going to have David Dunn, who is the founder and CEO of Velocity. Am I pronouncing that right? Yeah. Wow. Formerly COO of Edelman Digital. Is that right? Wow. Give a talk about how PR, what's the title of it?
Well, we're going to talk about, set up the panel here by talking about how to prepare for a successful media campaign and how to prepare yourself and your company so that these guys over here can do a great job of it.
Wonderful. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to David. So welcome, David.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So one of the things that I was having a look at and was interested in preparing for this was how are entrepreneurs faring in the media? And one of the things that cropped up when I did that research was that 35-year-old plus entrepreneurs seem to be doing better. At least that's what the most recent articles are referring to. So a quick show of hands, how many folks here are 35 plus? And some people who refuse to admit it, but may well be. So that's about a little close to half the room. And so I'm going to guess that a good portion of the rest of you are below 35. So I'm going to tease out why that might be and present with you hopefully some things that you can take advantage of as you think about that. So the first thing, as we think about the profile of today's entrepreneur, a couple of things, of course, we all know have changed. One is we're in an ultralight startup meeting. That's one very big thing that's changed. So the days of needing massive amounts of capital have kind of passed us by, and now you can start things on a very lean budget. Okay, so applause, because of course you all deserve that, right? You're working very hard to bring your service to life, so make sure you praise yourselves. That's very important. But the challenge, of course, is that now there are thousands of more companies to compete with that you didn't have to compete with before. And so as you kind of enter this marketplace, it becomes more and more important to differentiate yourself and to understand what those things are that are going to differentiate you. And that can be very hard to do if you've never done it before, which may explain why some of the 35 plus folks who would perhaps launched multiple companies are enjoying some more success, or at least perceived success. So I'm David Dunn, as was introduced, and I have been called a lot of things. Some people have said I'm a serial entrepreneur. I think that's a sort of a strange term because it suggests that there's something weird about you. I think there has to be something strange about you if you keep doing this, because I do believe it's a little harder. My wife said to me one time recently that I must like it when it's really difficult, because I keep setting myself back into these situations where, in fact, it is really difficult. But I started my first digital company in 1994 and launched the first online game, at least the first that we can count, which was TrivialPursuit.com. We launched that in 1995. Launched a search engine marketing company called Link Builders in 1996. That was definitely the first search engine marketing company. And followed that with an integrated marketing company. I can tell you at the time nobody knew what to do with that. Integrated marketing was definitely ahead of its time in 97. I was fortunate enough to meet the Edelman family, and it was a 20-minute conversation at the end of which Richard said, "Let's get married." And I stayed at 11 years at Edelman. I think I went for 2 and stayed 11. It was a great experience, and I was fortunate there to build the Edelman Interactive business. And then a number of years later, we merged 3 businesses: a mobile business, a business called F8 Media, which is really a future business, and then Edelman Interactive, and created Edelman Digital, which is a global business today. So I'm coming to this conversation from a place of some experience, but that I think is interesting because it comes from experience from both large and small settings. So from pure ground-up entrepreneurial bootstrapping to having resources and significant resources available to me to scale up a business. So what did I learn? Well, the first thing is, you know, if you're going to approach this and you want to be successful at it, you better really start thinking about yourself as an athlete. And there are different kinds of athletes. There are sprinters. There are endurance athletes. And although many people may think that as an entrepreneur you need to be a sprinter, you much more need to be an endurance athlete, right? Who at times is an amazing sprinter. So if you think about what would an athlete do to prepare, you know, you can come up with a very long list, right? There's diet, there's, you know, getting enough sleep, no alcohol, of course. For those of you in this room who don't drink alcohol, you've got an advantage. But most importantly, they would have a coach, right? Because the coach is the person who's going to get the best out of them. And what is it that a coach does? You might be surprised to find coaches have a long list of things that they do. 7 clearly identified coaching steps in order to get the best out of their athlete. So would it surprise you then to think that the successful entrepreneurs actually think about the steps it's going to take for them to be successful? And the context that we're talking about here, of course, is success in the media, right? But the media is going to be the thing that actually governs, you know, who learns about you, where, and when. So what we've outlined here are 6 steps that, at least from my perspective and those of my colleagues, believe are pivotal. One is you got to have a strategy, right? And it's not just any kind of strategy. It's a strategy that governs your business, that governs your marketing, and that governs your messaging. And it's that strategy that will allow you then to create a story that you can pitch to the media that they will actually want to write about. And we heard 17, or well, we heard 15 pitches tonight. And tomorrow, think about this carefully. Who do you remember? Right? Because there's going to be all kinds of settings that you get to use these messages in. This is one of them. And very few people, unfortunately, stand out in the crowd. It's really, really difficult. This is one setting where you will need to. But more importantly, as you think about pitching and maintaining a relationship with the media, what is it that you're going to bring them that's of value so they'll want to keep coming back to you as a source? These are all the kinds of things that this panel are going to help you to answer in specific tactical terms. But what I know is that you need a plan. These are 3 companies that recently launched, Adaptoo, Ojo, and Yama. You can have a look at them online, and they're all kind of doing cutting edge and breakthrough things. And you can look at those and look at the messages that are on the site, and I think you'll find that there's some things there that are useful to you as references. So when you've done all the hard work and you've got your messages, what is it that you're going to do to break through the clutter? I think number 1, get the tools. Number 2, make sure that the entrepreneur begins and ends with you, and that what you project out is that of the business person who's going to fly the company. Somebody asked me earlier tonight, you know, I found it was hard to find information about you online. I said, well, that's because I focus on making sure that my client's information. So I think you ought to think about that, right? So what is your role? Presumably, if you're promoting your business, you want to get your message out loud and clear. So surround yourself with coaches and make sure that the panel here answers your questions. And of course, if there's any for me, don't hesitate to ask me later on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David. Yeah, you can just close that. Actually, yeah, you can go ahead and take that. All right. Thanks for that intro. Now I'm going to introduce our panel, bring up our slides. So I don't believe Nick Saint has arrived. He's the journalist from Silicon Alley Insider that was supposed to be where Brian is sitting right now. So we're lucky enough to have some awesome people. Really? So 2.5 hours is pretty late. Okay. Now the question is, if he does show up, will he make it onto the panel? He'll have to plead his case. But we're lucky enough to have Brian as our stand-in, so that's awesome. So let's see. Let's start right here. Jim Bruni, founder of Bruni PR, formerly with Rudder Finn, Burson Marsteller, and anybody else? Did I miss? Big PR companies. Now he runs his own PR companies. 3 weeks at Edelman. So he's made the rounds. Okay, and then we have Stacy Green from Mashable, who's been with Mashable for a month, 1 month. Best month of your life, I'm sure. So she's not actually a writer. She helps get PR for Mashable. Mashable is a startup, as many of us are, probably slightly further along than some of us. But they need to be in the press too, and that's what Stacy helps with. Is that right? Among other things. Okay. Brian Cohen is from iFluence PR. He's also from New York Angels. So he's chairman, vice chairman of New York Angels, which is, I believe, the largest angel group in New York City, in the United States. Wow. And he has agreed to step in for various journalists who may or may not go unnamed right now. iFluence PR, do you want to turn on your mic and tell us a little bit about iFluence PR and or New York Angels? Takes a second. Is it turned on? Okay, we'll get you another mic then.
Yeah, the New York Angels, for those of you who are interested in looking for money, has funded probably about 30 companies in New York City. We've spent about $40 million writing lots of checks to about 65 companies. There's 75 of us in the New York Angels, and we're growing. The New York community is looking for more funding from mentor types of funding people. As a call out, I just want to mention somebody who is sitting there, Gideon Gartner, from the famous Gartner Group. He's a New York Angels, been a great investor to a lot of companies and a great mentor. So if anybody's looking for money from New York Angels, just let me know, and I'll see what I can do to help support whatever that need is. iFluence PR is about 8 months old. I had started the first science and tech internet PR agency back in 1981. Grew it to 300 people. It was the largest in the United States. We handled all of IBM Corporation, 52 divisions, all of Sony Corporation, for more than 14 years, and pretty much introduced just about every major internet company there is in the U.S. and some parts of Europe. So I'm here. I was here to actually talk about the Angels, but gee whiz, talk about PR since I've been doing it for 30 years. So I look forward to offering you some whatever I can wisdom if it's still there. Thanks.
All right, and we have TJ Walker down at the end. TJ is a media trainer and the founder of Training Worldwide and tjwalker.com. Any other sites that you own, TJ? Let's focus on those two right now. We won't talk about the others. I have been lucky enough to get a little bit of press exposure, both print and TV. You know, when you all watch Your Business on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. And when I got called for that interview, the very first thing I did was I picked up a copy of TJ's book, Media Training A to Z. Is that the name of it? Which I read in its entirety, maybe twice, and gave me some great tips about that. So welcome, TJ. I tell you what, you got a book copy there? Okay, so you can talk about that for a second while I try and get the slides up on the screen here. Is your mic working?
It's available tonight for $700. No. I will give a copy of this to anyone who gives me a business card tonight, a PDF version. I'll email you the copy free of charge. Just give me your business card or an email address. And in this, you'll have all the basic tips of how to prepare for interviews, how to look your best, sound your best, how to speak in sound bites and control your message.
Great. Thanks very much. I'm now struggling to get the slides up here. For some reason, it's not recognizing my computer. Try another computer. Well, my first slide was, what is the objective of PR? Why should I do that rather than advertising or marketing? How does it fit into the overall marketing mix? Anybody want to offer some insights into that? I know I asked you guys all this on the phone before, with the exception of Brian. So, I don't know. Jim, you want to talk about that?
So we'll do ladies first.
Go ahead.
So I think a good place to start, many of you may have not studied marketing PR in undergrad or grad school. The general difference between PR and marketing traditionally is paid and unpaid. And so you can buy a ton of ads and build out your marketing plan. And if you have money, that's a really good thing to do. Or you can, or you can focus on PR, which is unpaid. And I think in the panel we can go into how unpaid has grown. And there are so many different ways that you can get PR where it was traditionally newspaper and magazines, and now it's different websites, different tactics, events, whatnot. So that would be the difference between PR and marketing, which I think is a good thing to set the table with. And now I'd ask one of the gentlemen to jump in.
If you're an entrepreneur, the biggest difference between PR and advertising is how many of you have an extra $1 million sitting around to buy TV ads on NBC? With PR, you can get your name out there and get in front of millions of people through your creativity and your drive and saying something interesting without necessarily having a big advertising budget. And I'm not sure PR people like to think of it as free media or unpaid media. We like PR people to be paid, don't we? But we're not paying the media outlets. But you can do it yourself. You don't have to hire outside help. You can do it yourself. You can do it with your blogs. You can do it primarily by putting interesting ideas out every day through video on your blog, audio, text blogging, putting out a steady stream of your expertise, and that's what will generate long-term brand awareness for you through traditional media, through social media, and every other way.
It's interesting. PR is marketing. I started as a journalist, and when I said I was going to do PR, everybody went, oh, really? And when I said I was doing marketing, they said, that's what we really need. So PR for the years that I did it was really strategic elements that allow you to find the energy in what you do and find the connection of that energy to the people who need it. So if you look at PR as just about everything you do from the minute you wake up in the morning to the minute you go to sleep, and how you communicate, who and how you choose who you talk to, when, for that moment in time, as the winds are blowing, whatever the issues may be, that are answering, your call to say, I want to be a part of that conversation, then you realize the incredible power of PR. It's an ongoing activity. It's something you think about 24/7, and it's something that a lot of companies, when they recognize how to really tap the power of it, becomes the most important part of their communications process.
Awesome. Is there anything you can measure about PR? Or is it a total crapshoot? Okay.
Well, the main metric today is how often a story or earned media is retweeted. I know most of my clients now, that's what they're really, how they measure how much buzz they get from a story, how much it's retweeted. I'd say by far that's the major metric right now.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting. We always think about the after effect to measure something. What happened? PR actually starts before something happens. PR starts first. And when you ask the question, for example, a company that I consult to here in New York, you probably heard of as Comixology. And when they came to me, they said, we want to be the leader in the comics digital distribution space. So we had to define what that meant. And we had to ask ourselves, what would be a believable characteristic of what you would actually do to be a leader? And PR actually drove what it was that they then did and acted upon to be strategic in winning the marketplace. In other words, it actually began to define, if you're going to be the leader, what do you need to be so that actually people would write about you and the things that you are accomplishing. So PR as a measurement tool first starts with how well were you versed in understanding your marketplace first? Were you smart enough? That's a measurement in itself. What were your initial goals? Did you understand your markets to appreciate those goals? Did you attain those goals in the actual sales and the end result? But more importantly, have you connected with people long term so those goals can be actually seen in the media? And it's a far more complicated element that surrounds the entire company than just, gee, did you get a pickup with a key message?
Okay.
And sometimes you may put out a story or put out a release and only one person sees it, but that person becomes an anchor client. That's pretty successful. Other times you are in the media, you get stories, your phone isn't ringing off the hook,
but it's a building block. It's something you just have to be credible in your industry. And it's all well and good to say there has to be a rate of return. How many of you know what the rate of return is on all the time you spend using spell check? Why do you use spell check? Because if you don't, you're just not credible. And a lot of you are going to have prospects come to your website if they don't see you as an industry leader, as a thought leader. They don't see various placements of you in major media. They're just not going to feel as comfortable with you. So it's often just a part of a puzzle that builds you credibility.
I think that's a really important piece, particularly since we're focused on startups. I think that, the end goal is to be profitable. Maybe the end goal is to be very profitable and be acquired or merged. But, it's a crapshoot. Like, you're competing with a lot of different competitors in a certain market. So what's going to set you apart? Being a thought leader. And that might not necessarily transfer to sales or downloads or user bases, but think of a space and think of the top name. If you think of location-based apps, the name that comes to mind might not have the largest user base, but they are looked upon as a thought leader in that space. So that translates into brand recognition, that translates into more media phone calls, that translates into events to high-level dinners where you get to interact with important people, that transfers into calls from investors and VCs who are hearing about you. So I think thought leadership is a really, really important way to think about PR, specifically for startups at an early stage.
Okay. So let's see if we can go to the next slide. How do I do that? There we go. Targeting your pitch. Okay, so you want to get your story written in some blog, Mashable, or New York Times, or you want to get on TV. You got to pitch somebody to do that, usually a journalist, a reporter, an editor, producer of some kind. How do you know who to target? If you're a startup, you just launched, you've been around for a little while, how do you figure out who it is that you're pitching?
Well, all the major media outlets and mainstream media now fortunately have people who cover startups. You can identify there are a couple of people at the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, so on and so forth, who have startups as part of their news beat. And you really have to familiarize yourself with the Times or the Journal and see who's covering what, understanding first which person you're going to target. If you're launching a mobile app, there's a certain person that you'll need to talk to, say at the New York Times, Nick Bilton, who covers that area. If you're financing, you just raised your Series A or Series B financing, you'll want to talk to Claire Miller at the New York Times. In other words, there are different people there that divvy up the beats, the news beats, and you have to understand who you're going after. And you have to really familiarize yourself with the reporter's output. It's like anything else in life. It's like dating or whatever. You want to really get to know the person. And matching a reporter with a startup is sort of like, a matchmaking process. I'm sure all of you read the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. You have your favorite reporters or stories that you see that you like. Make mental notes of stuff like that and try to think to yourself, gee, if I were, had my druthers, who would I be talking to at the Times or the Journal?
Or Mashable.
Or Mashable. Fortunately, with most startups, once you've been in Mashable, you're on the map. For the New York Times, it's essential to be in Mashable. But the problem then is, where do you go from there? Getting into Mashable, fortunately, is easy because they really are the paper of record, in this city at least, and many others. But getting into the New York Times or Wall Street Journal is a lot tougher.
So do you start with blogs and then you go for mainstream? Is that how it works?
You lay a groundwork with your blog coverage, your Twitter coverage, everything. Reporters look at everything. The first thing they do is a Google News search on your company. And if they don't find anything, you're in trouble. Okay, they really need to see something there. Ideally, a story by Adam Ostrow or somebody at Mashable. You're set. The reporter sees that. They know that they have some kind of third-party endorsement. But if you're starting out with scratch, nothing, it's very difficult, because reporters do respond to that kind of stuff. They look at how much buzz you generated, how many tweets, those kinds of things. And of course, they'll look at your website and anything there. But it's a real sorting out process.
Are you pitching the writers, the reporters themselves, or the editors?
Absolutely. Reporters today have more power than ever before. Years ago, you would approach the managing editor or the tech editor. Today, you can literally get on the phone and pitch the reporter. They have more leeway, more empowerment over what kinds of stories, which startups they want to cover. They often tell their editors who they think they should be covering.
How do you get on the phone with the reporter?
You pick up the phone and dial 556-1234 at the New York Times, and you call and you get them on the phone. They will talk to you. The telephone, folks, the most important
If you ever see the number
communications tool.
11111 come up on your caller ID, answer it. It's the New York Times. 2222222.
The phone remains the most important communications tool in PR.
Well, I would just interject that you can actually now probably reach a lot of reporters on Twitter. Like, a lot of them are putting the phone number
Follow them,
and their
retweet their story.
emails on their feeds, or you can @ them or DM them. I mean, if they're covering startups, they're definitely using Twitter and every other tool, so they're familiar and comfortable with communicating with you on those platforms. So there's less of a wall than there used to be, where you had to, trick an operator into transferring you to the managing editor.
Reporters have huge egos. They love to have people retweet their stories, comment on them, make suggestions. Like, I have a lot of reporters that are on my Facebook network, and I'm not ashamed to often, post their stories with kudos to so-and-so at the Journal or the Times. They love it, and it's a way of bonding with reporters that you're following. I'm not saying stalk them, but definitely follow them, figure out try to get into their mindset before you get on the phone and pitch. And the first thing you should do is really present a pitch letter, 3 to 4 paragraphs before you make that phone call. And a CEO of any startup who has pitched and done elevator pitches can probably easily write a pitch letter for a reporter. It's not all that hard. But do that, then follow up by phone, and you can be in the PR business very quickly.
Yeah, I really wish, all the advice is excellent, but I don't think it's as easy as you say for any one of you to pick up the phone and talk to these reporters. I know them. I know how hard it is to reach many of them. They're very not responsive. You're a startup company. They don't know you. So it isn't as easy as that. It's about 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. So you're going to have to keep working at trying to connect with them, even at events like this. I could play Nick. Try and do that if you need me.
Please do.
Okay. From my perspective, your success is going to be achieved by looking at a variety of places to find the editors. We use Cision. There's a variety of databases that you can use. It isn't just one editor. You can find multiple doorways to enter into a publication, and you have to ask yourselves, what are those doorways? It's a strategy. Who are those reporters? What is the makeup on the masthead? Who covers what? Who answers to who? A reporter comes in every day, and they're in the real estate business. They have big, empty white space in front of them, and they say to themselves, what house am I going to build here today? And if you've got the house to build because it has the most beautiful living room and the most wonderful windows, and you look at them as a client, and you're trying to understand them and help them build that which gets them credibility, you're going to be a lot more successful. But it's not as easy as one is making it out to be. I wish it was, but everybody here, if you call and you're just a small microcosm of New York, just imagine how many carrier pigeons are trying to deliver news stories to these people on a daily basis, right? In every way, shape, and form.
Go ahead, TJ.
The easiest way to pitch the media is to not pitch them on yourself. It's to be a part of a larger trend story. So, for example, one of our startups earlier tonight deals with baby names. So if it's 10 in the morning and you see an AP story about some study from Yale about a trend of the top 10 baby names, put out a 3-sentence quote on that, giving some analysis, and try to get it out there. You can be a part of that story. No, it's not going to be a gigantic profile of your business, but it's going to get your name out there, and you're going to start getting brand awareness as an industry expert. I typically do a dozen TV and radio interviews a week. Virtually none of them are just about me and my theories of public speaking and speaking to the media, but it's very easy for me to put out 3 sentences analyzing the governor's State of the State address last week in New York, and boom, I'm on a whole series of shows. This week, I do the 3-sentence analysis of the New Jersey governor's State of the State. Boom, put that out. NBC News, Russia TV, things like that. So don't be so greedy and say it's got to be a big, gigantic front-page profile of me and my startup. Start by making yourself useful to reporters by commenting on something that's in the news right now that they have to cover, and that will help you build relationships and get yourself quoted.
We're going to take some questions in a second. Anybody got any question? No. Just a question, if possible.
We have credibility in that space, but we get proof from nationals, New York Times. They're not interested in us as a business, and that's what we do. Like,
And the question?
Targeting for PR to what your business needs. That's great to have traffic, not if it's converted, not if it can't convert to revenue.
Okay.
So how can you make that shift from being, you know, oh, here's the seasonal baby names or whatever your, you know, the Google Bears or whatever.
Okay. Okay. Jenny, I love you. You know that.
Sorry.
First of all, nobody on the video stream or in Boston can hear you when you're talking. If you just make a 1-sentence question, no statements, that'd be better because it's really not being fair to the people on the stream that are watching. So just a question, please. So anybody want to address that?
So what's the question? Practice your soundbite.
How can you be a business story? How can you be a business story?
Yeah, so it's all nice and good to be an industry expert, but if it's not driving business and not a profile of your business, is it worth anything? Part of what will get you more profile stories is if people simply see you everywhere. If you're a part of the landscape in your niche, it's going to be easier to pitch them on stories. It's going to be easier to build relationships, especially if a reporter has used you as an expert 4 times over the last 9 months. At that point, you can say, hey, by the way, how about an introduction to your business person who does profiles? If you've already given great value to a reporter, the relationships can be built. You're also much more likely for people to find you when they're Googling and looking for industry experts to do a profile of. So it's not going to be as simple as you get quoted as an industry expert and boom, 10 new clients come. It's just not that fast.
Okay.
But I actually think that's an important question, and we talked about, I think Jim mentioned, like laying out your plan. What is your goal? So if you're starting on early on, your goal is to get users and volume, and so you want to be buzzed about, and you want to be in Mashables, like here are top 5 apps for this, and here are the top 5 things for this, right? And then when you're ready to become, or you have become, or you hit that point where like you're a business and you want a business story, and once you want a business story and you get that phone call, oh boy, you better be prepared to answer tough questions, and you know that's a whole nother discussion, but then that becomes your goal, and then you need to think about it in a different way. You need to think about who you're reaching out to in a different way, and you have to, like all great things in life, you have to do your homework. And Jim said it, reporters have big egos. You should know them. They don't need to know you. So if you go to them with information they can't use, or you go to them to cover your business and they're not a business reporter, that's it. Like, you've ruined your relationship. So you need to do your homework, and then to TJ said, once you have credibility in the space, it's natural for you to, and you have a relationship, to ask to make an intro or to point you in the right direction. But what is the goal? And there's different goals for PR.
Okay. So let's talk about the pitch. So you've got a reporter targeted in Mashable or New York Times or wherever have you. I guess we touched on already Twitter-based pitching and phone-based pitching. Maybe let's touch on email. I think that may be the sort of the standard way, traditional way. So what should go into an email pitch?
A news story suggestion. The pitch letter shouldn't look like a promotional ad for your company. The biggest criticism we get from reporters when we're pitching them, and they don't like your pitch letter, is they say it reads like an ad. That's the worst criticism you can have. What reporters are interested in is news story ideas that you may have. Now, obviously, some of them would be self-serving since they involve your startup, but they have to be packaged in a way that it's a news story. You have to sort of get into the reporter's mindset and think, why would I want to be covering your startup? What is it? What's the bigger story that it's part of, as TJ's saying? What's the bigger trend? A pitch letter has to be about a news story. If it goes on and on about your latest product, your latest service, it reads like a press release. That's wrong. Pitch letter and a press release are two different animals. Press release, you have the license to go on and on about your company or your products, whatever, your profits, your revenue. A pitch letter is really a one-to-one communication with a reporter where you're saying, hey, I really follow your stuff. I read your stories all the time. I have a suggestion here that involves my company, my startup, something that we're seeing that's really big out there that you should be covering. And we'd love to be your media expert if you decide to do this story.
Okay, we got a question right here. Short question, right? Do you say my client is part of this story? Well, I guess most people here probably are their own client, right?
If we're being paid, we'll divulge that, definitely. If I'm a PR guy and I'm sending a pitch letter to one of my contacts, yeah, it's obvious it's a client. I wouldn't be pitching them otherwise. At least most of my reporter friends know that I don't do a whole lot of pro bono work. So, yeah, they're going to assume that it's a client. No, you don't want to mention the competition. No, okay. Let them find that out.
Okay, John, do we have a question? Difference in PR approaches from B2B or B2C companies? I see somebody nodding.
Definitely.
Okay, what is that difference?
If it's a consumer play, it's a lot easier pitch because there are more people who are covering the consumer side of technology. The B2B side is much more difficult to pitch. And there you're going to have to go vertical. If it's a B2B thing that's targeting, say, the retail industry, a platform, a new sales platform, you really want to be talking to the retail reporter as well as the tech reporters. But B2B is different. Most reporters cover the consumer side of technology, unfortunately.
Okay, so what do you do? Say you're a B2B company and you want to get in the press. What are some strategies for that?
Trades
are definitely important. Yeah, you got to look at the industry you're targeting. If you're B2B and your customer base is aeronautics or airline industry or automotive or whatever, go after the trades and the reporters that cover those specific kinds of industries that are closer to your B2B core.
Yeah, I don't think there's really that much difference between a consumer pitch or a B2B pitch. They're reporters and they have the same job. They have to come in and they have to satisfy their readership.
Yeah.
And that's their goal. When it comes to actually dealing with, doing email, I wanted to touch on that in a moment, pithy, quick, related to an issue that's come up, maybe an issue that they've written about. But the opportunities that exist in the B2C or the B2B is pretty much the same. It's a reporter who wants to really impress their readership and create a stronger sense of community and knowledge.
Okay.
I just want to add one thing to the pitch. Well, two things. Someone asked about, do you disclose? Well, authenticity is super important for building relationships with reporters. So yes, you might not want to disclose at one point, what your revenues are, and you'll set guidelines for the reporter, what's off the record, what's on the record. But for a pitch, you have to be super authentic. And three things. Be super direct of what this is about in the subject line, because we all know that we get a ton of emails. Imagine how many reporters and editors and bloggers get. So super direct subject line. And 3, you can always phrase it in a way that's, are you interested? It gives the reporter an option to say, no and preserve the relationship and come back to you. It also gives the opportunity for them to say, no, and here's why. I just covered something like this last month. I would really like to. My editor says I don't have space. And then you know that. And so you get why it's not happening now, but it could happen in the future, right? Instead of just pushing news on someone, then that way you can maintain a relationship and you might get some really good feedback. They might say, no, I'm not covering this anymore. I just switched beats yesterday. Let me make an intro to so-and-so who's taking over that beat.
That's awesome. Thank
And
you so much.
I don't think the category in your mind should be B2B versus B2C. It should always be about this particular media outlet and its audience. What message do I have that's really going to be interesting to this audience, and it's really going to be interesting to this reporter? And what do I have that's important about that? It's a three-legged stand. And something, you could have two different consumer magazines. They have completely different audiences and interests of the reporters. You've always got to focus on those three elements for every single pitch. It's not as simple as B2B or B2C.
Okay. We're a little bit behind schedule on this, so I'm going to suggest short questions and only one panelist to answer any given question. So let's go all the way down there. How important is a press release? Who wants to answer that? Okay, go ahead, Brian.
There are 7 rules associated with great success in PR. One of them is making it as easy as possible for the reporter to write about what it is you want them to write about, right? So if you're just going to tell them something and then they have to sort of figure out what to write about, you're making it difficult. So the press release, media release, social media release, or whatever you want to call it, is really all of the kinds of information that you have really worked hard at molding and crafting that allows that reporter to say, great, you've given me everything I need. That's why it's so important.
Okay, no follow-ups, please. Keeping it short and sweet. We're already way over schedule. Okay, Lloyd. Can you do your own public relations? Or do you need to hire? I mean, full disclosure, Lloyd may get paid for public relations services from time to time. Right. Okay, so can you do it yourself? Anybody is successful at that?
The answer is yeah, of course you're going to do it yourself. You're an entrepreneur. You do everything yourself. I mean, what, are you going to pay for it? The fact that you're here learning how to do it best. And it's not rocket science. Each of you could be trained. I can train you in an hour to be brilliant at PR and how to craft a release. Don't think that it's so difficult.
But
You've
you're
all
going to
got
put Lloyd
skills.
out of a job.
Can I just add one thing to we're spending a lot of time about releases. I want to point out a simple fact. That is, the vast majority of what we think is the big traditional media, they're imploding. They are losing money left and right. They are scrambling, and they are desperate for new partners, new revenue models. It's not that hard. Rather than putting something out in a release, do what a lot of people do. Like, I pitched Forbes. I'm now a columnist for Forbes on their blog, not being paid anything, but now I can write a column on that. That becomes my press release to pitch myself to NBC because I'm Forbes. I pitch Reuters TV, Reuters Insider Network. I'm a regular weekly TV commentator for Reuters. It's not that hard. You've got to pitch them. So now I can use a video clip from Reuters pitching myself to other TV people. So the media world is imploding, and they're reaching out for people who have expertise. And if you have expertise on baby names or how to do iPad apps, they may give you a column. That in and of itself is PR, but that's the best press release to get into other media if you're already in the media.
Awesome.
Earned media is the best thing you can send a reporter. If you get a major story on Mashable, send that instead of the press release.
Okay. We have another question from online. How do you reach bloggers? I love online. Very succinct. How is that? How do you reach bloggers? Stacy, you didn't. Not only are you working for one of the biggest blogs in the world, but you didn't answer. You were one of the the only person that didn't answer the last question. So go ahead.
Well, I was trying to respect the rules.
I know. I respect you for that.
Thank you. Okay, blog. So, well, Mashable started as a blog, and we've grown to a much larger website. So we get about 35 to 40 million page views a month. So that's pretty good if you want to reach a lot of people. Now, how do you reach bloggers? there's a lot of blogs out there. I could have a blog, you could have a blog. That doesn't mean we reach 10 million people a month, right? So there's different classes of blogs. But once you get to a certain point with these mainstream blogs, I don't really differentiate how you reach out to those folks who are writing for them different from how you reach out to folks at a magazine or a radio station or a newspaper. I just don't differentiate them. They're all writers at this point, and they're all writing for the internet. So how do you reach them? Well, the great thing about blogs is they're usually pretty straightforward about reaching them. They all have About Us bios. They all link to their Twitter accounts. They all link to their LinkedIn accounts, and they all have photos. So that's pretty easy. Some of them have contact forms. Use them. They check them. Just be smart and succinct with what you write in there. You don't want something to become public that you wouldn't want to be public. So, hey, I'm so-and-so from X. I have a news story that you may be interested in. Here's why. I mean, it's like a pitch letter in a form. Here's my email. Find people on Twitter. Search Facebook. Don't be creepy about it, though. But most people do list their email that they know will be public. I mean, bloggers are out there. They accept that it's part of their job to be out there and be contacted. So I don't think it's that much different than reaching a reporter. In many ways, reaching a blogger is a lot easier. For Mashable, you can always email news@mashable.com, and we have editors who check that 24/7 and then forward it to the appropriate reporter. Yeah. That's an easy way. And a lot of sites have that news@ function. Every organization, I used to work at the New York Times, if you want something in BizDay, send it to bizday@nytimes.com. They have people who check that. They take it very seriously. It's important. They don't want to miss scoops that are in there. So you should use those functions if you don't have a direct contact.
Okay, thank you, Stacy. So this lady right here has been very patient. What's your question? Do you put everything out there on your website, or do you hold something back to give to a reporter? Great. Okay, so there's the question. Who wants to answer?
Well, you should put all your contact information out there, unless it's private.
Do you understand the question? The paywall? Is that what you're talking about? You have a subscription-based site? Okay, I think we're going to have to move on if that's okay. I'm sorry.
We're happy to answer afterwards.
Yeah, follow up with some of these guys. All the way in the back, the guy in the, yes. Oh, miss, I'm sorry. Question, please. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to take a question from this guy back here, all the way in the back. Is Cision useful? What is Cision, and is it useful?
Yeah, first of all, Cision is unfortunately very expensive. And it provides a database of the reporters and what areas they cover with immediate contact information. And since the turnover rate is between, 30 to 50%, if you get the absolute knowledge as to who's where and what they cover, it makes your life a lot easier. So it's very useful, yes.
PR interns. They can find anything on the internet for free.
Okay.
And give them credit or pay them.
The gentleman all the way in the back there, all the way against the wall. Go ahead. Should you pitch an exclusive? What is an exclusive, and why would I want to use it or not? Anybody?
The idea of an exclusive is what? What? To make somebody feel as though you're making them feel special, right? You make one person feel special. How does everybody else feel? Not so special. Right? So it's something to be very careful about. And I think every case and every situation you have to deal with on an individual basis. Today you really don't have to deal with that much because everything happens so quickly. We hardly ever used it. We wanted everybody to feel special, and that made everybody feel like they had to cover us. So I don't really think it's a good idea.
I was talking to one of you in our pre-interviews about the relationship between exclusives and embargoes, and what are embargoes? Are they respected? How do they tie into exclusives?
Well, an embargo is an agreement between you and the reporter that you're going to give them the information or the announcement or whatever it is, the news coming out of your company, but that it would be embargoed or held for release at a later date. In other words, you could be talking to the reporter, give them the story, tell them everything, with the agreement that the story isn't triggered until an agreed upon date. Now, why would you want to have an embargo? Well, you know, say if you have an IPO coming up or Series A or Series B financing, and your VCs are telling you, listen, you have to have a quiet period of at least 3 or 4 weeks before you can announce this. But you're chomping at the bit. You want to tell Mashable. You want to, you know, get Pete Cashmore on the phone or Mike Arrington and let them know the good news. Well, you try to arrange an embargo. That's getting a lot harder to do these days. TechCrunch, if they have it, they'll run with it. They don't respect embargoes anymore. But the mainstream media still does. That's the good news. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, they will respect that. Now, regarding the exclusives, sometimes they get confused a lot. Embargoes, exclusives, all this kind of stuff. You know, my take on it is this. If you have a really good rapport with a particular reporter that you like and you trust them and you've been talking to them, and they ask you as a favor, please give me this news before you distribute it to other reporters. If you feel comfortable in doing that, then you grant them the exclusive. It's really, you know, it depends on the situation that you're in. As far as excluding other people, I mean, you know, if what's at stake is getting a major story in the New York Times and they're asking for an exclusive, that's a no-brainer. Of course you're going to give them the exclusive. You're not going to say, gee, I don't want to alienate the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times and everybody else. No, you want to get a big bang out of your announcement. Yeah. So at certain times, the exclusive is called for and warranted.
TJ?
We've had a lot of questions about the best email pitch, the best telephone pitch. There's a huge, huge opportunity out there that very few people follow, and that is if you want to get on CNN, CNBC, Fox, MSNBC, they're video medium. I've found that producers there are incredibly open to a video submission. So if I hear reporters thinking of doing a story, you know, at 9:30 of analysis of Obama's State of the Union, by 9:45, I haven't written to them text. They don't deal in the text world. I have captured a video of me talking for 2 minutes, giving detailed analysis. Yeah, and if a reporter sends me questions and they're trying to figure out who they want as a guest, I'm not going to type them back answers. I'm going to shoot a quick video. All you need is your iPhone, a flip camera, any camera. This way, if they're a TV producer, they can see that you speak. They can see that you're not drooling. They can see that if they put you on the air, they're not going to lose their job. Very few people send video pitches that are topical and about something breaking news. So it really cuts through the clutter. That's gotten me on the CBS Sunday Morning Show and a lot of other shows. It's very simple to do. In fact, it's easier than writing a press release. You're just talking. No one sees your spelling errors. So don't overlook that opportunity if you want to get on TV.
Great. Awesome. We have Rich Berger from CNOS Web. What are other metrics you look at for PR?
Well, the old school method was loose clippings, when they'd send you the envelope with all the clippings from newspapers. And at one time, that was the chief metric, the only metric. Today it's difficult to determine the reach on a story, particularly if it's a subscriber content, if it's within someone's paywalls. For instance, like when I get a hit on Financial Times, it's tough. People can't see it because it's a subscription-based paper. You really have to take that into consideration.
Okay. Those are the metrics. Do we have, well, let's take this lady right back here. do it yourself versus hiring an agency? Anybody?
Well, reporters are always going to want to talk to the person who created it, so you should be prepared to do that. I think a great entrepreneurial knows their limitations, so if they're necessarily not the best front person in the beginning, it might be worthwhile to bring someone on, a consultant, to help you get in the door, but you should always be prepared to talk to the reporter, and that's what they're going to want, because you are the story and you know it best and you're the most passionate and you're going to give the best quotes.
Okay. I think I may have asked each of you to prepare a tip, your top tip for getting through the editorial filter. Do you have any insights as to pitching a reporter? I want to get us in a story. What's the most important thing?
Flattery.
Okay.
Flatter the reporter.
Anybody else? Brian, Stacy, TJ? TJ.
Well, as I mentioned, send a video, but it can't be a boring video. You need to have interesting sound bites, and sound bites come from one of 10 speech patterns. It's got to be action-oriented. It has to have perhaps a cliche, an attack, emotion. There are 10 specific categories, and again, I'm giving this to you if you want a whole chapter on what makes it quote. It's very precise. It's almost scientific. It's not random. You've got to package your ideas in sound bites, and I'll email you the book on how to do that if you just give me your card.
Okay.
It's interesting that the two answers were flattery and packaging. It's all about content. It's all about, and if you don't, as I said before, think about what you're going to say brilliantly, intelligently, and well, all the flattery will get you nowhere, and all the packaging won't go either.
Flattery and a good news story idea.
There you go.
So my response will tie it all together. So send the email as if you may never hear from them again, but they will write the story. So give them everything they need, because that happens. So give them the subject line, give them the nice flattery, whatever it is. Try and be authentic about it. No one likes disingenuous flattery. Give them the bullet points. Give them screenshots. I mean, with what you're comfortable with. You don't want to give the product away. You want to give them enough so that they could actually take the product and run with you, and they just might. That's happened. People have written stories when they never responded because they're just on tight news schedules, and they have everything they need. So that would be my tip, especially when we're talking about pitching online publications, pitching some of these startup reporters who are also blogging on their respective sites.
Okay, we got a question from online. What do you do if a reporter likes to cover your competitor?
You develop a relationship with them, especially if they're important in the industry and the beat that you cover. You don't want to give up on them. And reporters go to the same sources a lot. It's kind of like comfort, like they have them on speed dial, but they might not be aware that you exist, so make them aware.
It's actually a good thing that they cover your competitor, right? They like to have more than one horse in a race. It's generally not a good reporter's perspective to write only about one company. Their readership is going to kind of not want to read them too much.
All right. I want to move on to the interview. Okay, so say you've managed to make it through the editorial filter. The journalist wants to write about you. Somebody wants to put you on TV. What is important in preparing for your interview? TJ, this is your center of expertise.
Well, the big problem most entrepreneurs have, and really everybody has, is they want to tell people everything about their business. And they're 1% of the way in, and the interview's over. You've got to really figure out what are your 3 most important messages. Mark Twain used to say, I'm sorry I wrote you a 20-page letter. I didn't have time to write you a 1-page letter. It takes more time to really figure out what is important. The number one way to really get ready for an interview is you have to rehearse on video. Nobody ever does that, but that's the way to do it. I mean, how many of you would send out a press release to all the media and all your clients and customers without spell checking it? Nobody. Well, if you ever do an interview and you haven't actually videotaped it and watched it, you're sending out your rough draft. Well, the rough drafts of most things are garbage. People will spend hour after hour after hour tweaking and writing a press release, or redoing a PowerPoint size 10,000 times, and then they'll just get up and give a speech, and it's the first time they've actually said it. They don't really know how they're coming across. They don't know that, they're standing up, holding themselves like this. So if you do this, it doesn't matter how good your message is. People will think you're scared and weird. If you videotape yourself, you'll know how you're coming across. And it also is the best way to get over nervousness. If you're nervous about going on a TV show or speaking to a reporter or giving a speech, there's good reason. You might be or you might be boring. You don't really know if you haven't seen it. So, and you don't need to hire me to do it. You can do it with your webcam. You can do it with your iPhone. Simulate your interview roughly the same way. You can do it to yourself if you want to. Watch yourself. Look at the video. And if you look at the video and you think you're boring, guess what? You are. If you listen to yourself and you think you're monotone and flat and hard to understand, you are. You need to keep practicing until you can look at a video of yourself and think, wow, that person's interesting. If I can do half as well as that person, that'll be a great interview. That's the number one secret to really being good at this process. These days, it's never been easier. All of us probably have a dozen cameras between what's on our cell phone, what's on our webcam, a flip cam, your digital cameras capture video. There's absolutely no excuse.
Do you do that for print interviews also?
Absolutely, because when you're watching the video, it's much easier to isolate and stop the tape and think, what if just the last 10 seconds is the only quote that gets into the story? Would I be happy? If the answer is no, it's going to be a lot easier to not say that in the real interview. So when I'm training executives, even if it's for print interviews, we always do the video recording. We might not spend as much time talking about how they're dressed or how they're sitting, but it's much easier to really focus on what you're saying, and it's much faster than transcribing it all.
Jim seemed like he disagreed with that.
Nah, most of the print interviews I set up, we don't do this kind of taping. For broadcast, that's fine, but to be honest with you, most print reporters, they don't care how you look or dress. When you see what they look like and you get in the newsroom, you'll understand real fast. So I'd beg to differ a little bit, because most of my clients, if you get a call at like 12 noon and they want you to come in tomorrow into the newsroom, you don't really have the luxury to tape every interview or simulate everything you're doing. My suggestion is get together with one of your colleagues and let them pretend they're the reporter for about a half hour and pelt you with questions about your business model, things like that. It's a shortcut.
Okay.
If you have the time, then yeah, bring in a videographer.
The other thing to practice when you're with your colleagues is just sitting there staring at each other, because the hardest thing for people to do is be quiet when someone's looking at them, and so you tend to ramble on, and you might not hammer home the key messages to the reporter.
And if I could just clarify, it's not about looking good. I agree with you. It's not worth bringing in a videographer. What I'm suggesting is you have 5 minutes and a cab ride on the way to an interview, even if it's just with yourself. Capture what you're saying. And if you don't want to do the video, at least capture the audio so you can actually hear the words and what you're saying to make sure the message is right. I'm not concerned about the visuals. Okay. You're right, if it's a print reporter, but to capture the message and figure out what works.
TJ, in your book, you highlight some terms, some jargon that is industry standard but was new to me. These are media messages and sound bites. So can you define what those are and why they're so important?
Well, a media message is simply a distinct idea, something you're trying to communicate with the media. The media will not take your whole business plan and put it into a story. They're not going to take a 10-page white paper. A media message is just one idea distilled down to its essence. It's something you should be able to say in about 10 seconds or less. I'm a big believer you shouldn't be greedy. You shouldn't go into an interview with more than 3 key messages. That doesn't mean that's the only thing you're going to say in the interview, but your sense of what is truly important. Now, a soundbite is what literally gets quoted. It's a quote if it's in text. It's a bite out of your sound if it's in audio for radio, video for text. And that's what I'm talking about. It comes from these speech patterns. It's not random. It's not straightforward. But virtually every soundbite you hear comes from one of 10 categories. It's a bold, action-oriented word. It's an attack. It's a cliche. It's humor. There's rhetorical questions. There are patterns that repeat themselves. you have to package it in advance.
So, and you're literally reciting verbatim quotes that you have pre-rehearsed during an interview and saying something that you feel will be quoted
But
verbatim.
you don't want to sound like you've memorized stuff. If you sound canned and phony, you're going to sound blah. You're not going to be attractive at all. It's just an element. It's, you know, it could be an attack. It could be emotion. Simply saying, I'm outraged at makes it more quotable because you use the word outrage.
Gotcha.
The problem is that in a lot of interviews, you don't know what the reporter's going to ask you. A lot of what gets quoted that comes out of an interview is from the follow-up questions and things where you can't really plan the message points that carefully for your responses. You know, you have to sort of think of the questions that you might get asked and might not. And it's very difficult sometimes to script an interview because it is an interaction with another reporter. It's like a conversation with someone, a friend. You can't script it. Lots of times the best story ideas come out of the interaction and the follow-up questions that the reporter will ask. It often happens that the reporter discovers something, an idea, a nugget, a story idea within the startup story that not even the startup CEO or the PR person there present realized. It comes out of the magic of the interview. And I think you have to be mindful of that. Sometimes the best advice is just be yourself when you're talking with a reporter because they're going to mine and drill down and ask you questions and try to get away from the scripted stuff and get at what you really feel about your company, your business model, everything.
Okay. Yeah, everything that everybody's saying makes it sound like you've got to be on stage. You've got to be well scripted. You're the entrepreneur. You know your business extraordinarily well, right? You could talk to your mother about it. You could sit at the dinner table with your friends. If you take it easy, don't take any of this as, oh my God, I can't do it. I'm scared to death. You as an entrepreneur know your business better than anybody does, and you're comfortable talking about it. But be prepared to answer the toughest questions. Those are the hardest ones that when I used to hand them to clients, they would say to me, I'm sorry, can you give me different questions, please? Right? And then I knew I was talking about the right. Those are the ones you want to be sure you know the answers to. But the other stuff, that's the give me stuff. You know about your business. So ask yourself what the toughest questions you're afraid to be asked are. Those are the ones to concentrate on. So those are the ones you don't want to flub.
Okay. So this is our last slide. We are going to do this in the next 5 minutes or so. And it is on, so after the interview, you've already conducted it. The ship has sailed. You're in print. You're in a blog. You're on TV. Now what? And what do you do to maximize the value of that hit after it's already happened? Anybody have insights into that?
Well, it's called merchandising. You take your story, your placement, and you send it to everyone, your potential clients. You put it on your website as part of your earned media. You retweet it. You encourage your friends to retweet it. That's how you get out there today. I mean, you know, it's pretty simple.
Retweet it, comment on it. What about pitching for their reporters? Is that something you do? Here's something that I found interesting because when I talked to, I don't know if it was Nick, but a couple of you said you absolutely never want to send your recent clips to a new reporter to say, you know, you're going to feature me. Somebody else said you should absolutely do that. That's the first thing you should do. So anybody want to identify yourselves who's held those positions?
I don't remember.
I think earned media is definitely better, you know, than no earned media.
Well,
you know, even if it appears in, like I'm pitching Ad Week, okay, and the story's already run an Ad Age, why not? I mean, you know, if the story's big enough, both trades will cover it. And they're not going to feel like, wow, you know, that our competitor across the street or across town just covered them. We can't do it. Now, sometimes it's the other way around. It's a pack mentality where reporters say, well, gee, if Ad Week covered it, why aren't we? So, you know, it works both ways.
It's not rubbing it in the face of whoever didn't cover it first?
It just depends on how you phrase it. You know, and this is where you have to do your homework because there are certain publications that are super competitive, and so there's some journalists that are super competitive. And so it can go both ways. Like so-and-so covered it, so I'm not going to touch it. I'm on to the next hot thing. Or now I have to cover it. Editors on my back because I missed the story. So.
Okay. If I could just answer related to that, even before the final placement of the story, when you're in the story, figure out something you can do of value to the readers, viewers, listeners to make them want to engage with you. So, for example, if I'm on a talk radio show, I'll tell the host and the listeners, if you go to my website, I will give them a copy of my presentation, my public speaking book. All they have to do is go. So now people have an incentive to go to tjwalker.com. If I just say, go to my website, no one's going to. But if I say, if I've given them some insights and I say, I'll give you a free book in a PDF format, that will drive people there. And by the way, I'll do that to you too.
Okay, let's take some more questions right here in the front. How do you get onto TV? Oprah, is that different or similar? Similar.
You got to know the assignment producers. I don't happen to know the one for her show, but for CNBC, MSNBC, you have to really go to the assignment producer of the particular show that you're interested in getting on. If you want to get on Power Lunch on CNBC, you've got to talk to Karima Green, who's the producer that handles that show. So there you do have a little, it's a little more hierarchical than print, where print, the New York Times, you talk to the reporter, you don't have to really bother with the tech editor. But with broadcast, it's a little bit different. You really do have to talk to the show producer. Everybody has to buy in on the story idea.
Okay. And the easiest way to get on Oprah is to be on local TV and be great.
Okay. This lady here has been very patient. What's the best way to get more Twitter followers? Wow.
I mean, there's basic things you can do. The more you tweet, the more followers you get. The more people you tweet at, the more they're at reply you. The more influential people you at reply, they'll at reply you. Like, there's a lot of reciprocity on Twitter, which is a great thing. Those would be some simple things. According to a study, most people follow people or tweet on Tuesday mornings. I don't know if that's true. I mean, there's all sorts of metrics that have been pulled out there, but I think like tweeting interesting things, following the right accounts, retweeting interesting articles, and again, like I want to highlight the reciprocity on Twitter. You know, if you start tweeting a lot at someone, if they're a reporter or a producer, like, they'll notice at some point. They'll tweet back at you. It's a pretty nice medium.
Sloppy. Is this for everyone still, or should they maybe learn how to do something for themselves, or anybody do it?
Should you polish yourself up before pitching?
You just did a very good job. What problem do you have?
Ramon is
yeah, I mean, you'll learn it the best you can, like anything else. And you do the best job you can, unless you feel you need to hire a professional, right? Is it for everyone? PR? Communicating? Talking to people? Yeah, I think it is.
Absolutely. Everyone can be a great speaker. No one's a natural-born writer. People learn to write because they had a teacher giving them feedback every day for years. Rush Limbaugh and Martin Luther King Jr. have something in common most people don't realize. Both of them got C's in public speaking class, and yet they both learned to be great speakers. It is a learned skill like programming or anything else.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions total from people that haven't asked before. Let's take one right here. What other social networks other than Twitter and Facebook? Is there such a thing? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
Is LinkedIn useful for PR purposes? Anybody ever use that?
Yeah, a lot of reporters like LinkedIn. Often the case, I'll try to friend somebody on Facebook, and a reporter will say, no, do LinkedIn. So it's still, it's still pretty popular with reporters, though. I see a lot of them migrating to Facebook. I mean, Facebook now, 2 years ago, it would be tough to get a top editor at the Wall Street Journal to join my Facebook network because they knew that I'd start pitching them immediately. But today, they'll join. They're not afraid. Once in a while, if you write something on the wall or have a story idea that maybe you want to reiterate, I mean, email's the main way to get a hold of reporters and the phone. But yeah, I mean, writing on their Facebook wall is pretty cool too.
Okay, last question, John Murch. How do you separate Facebook
I
from
would
personal?
actually weigh in. A lot of reporters I know, especially in the startup space, aren't using Facebook. They're not going to friend you. It's not for business. LinkedIn is for business. Twitter is for business, but you don't want to call anyone out. Like, hey, you should cover this. It's more like, I have something you might be interested in. Can you follow me? And I'll DM you, or here's my email. A lot of reporters put their email on their Twitter account. So I would stick to those, not Facebook.
Twitter. Media people all love Twitter.
They really do.
Use discretion.
Okay.
That's the main.
That is the final germ of wisdom that we will impart on you tonight. Thank you, Jim, Stacy, Brian, TJ, Stacy.
I just want to close with since I do PR, I get to do PR for, I would be not doing a good job if I weren't here. But this is a positive thing. I mean, one, we're in a startup space. You're not the Speaker of the House. You're not Enron. Like, reporters aren't coming at you for a got you story. Like, so take a breath. Two, there's so many great reporters getting onto the startup beat, and they're smart and they're hungry and they want stories. And three, particularly at Mashable, we are really committed to expanding our coverage of startups, both out in the Valley, but also here in New York. So we have a new startups reporter coming soon. We also feature a startup or something interesting about a startup every day on our Spark of Genius series. So Mashable.com BizSpark every single day. So there's an opportunity to, one, use it as a resource for the things that you're doing and the trends that we're talking about, and two, for you to be featured on it.
Wonderful. Okay, so my last piece of advice is going to be to this panel. All of you are going to be mobbed by the crowd as soon as I stop here, and it's your mission to get out the door and down the stairs and over to Heartland Brewery across the street, where people can find you there and not take up too much of Microsoft's time, and get out the door and take the conversations over there. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah, we'll work with them. None of the time.